Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports, where we cover sports from a spectator's point of view. I'm your host, Sebastian Fonseca, and in this episode, we'll be recapping various action across the NFL and some major storylines coming out of the NBA. But before we get into the content, please do us a massive favor as we are on the grind to 400 subscribers by the end of the calendar year. And you can help us reach that goal by liking the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you want to get more Spectator Sports, we got there for you here on YouTube in our various playlists, as well as on TikTok. Plus, if you want to enjoy Spectator Sports from an audio-only experience, we got that for you on Spotify. I'll link everything in the description, and let's get into this week's episode. Mavs fans, you finally got your wish. After the historic trade sending Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers, Nico Harrison said that time will tell if I'm right. And 9 months later, time ran out. The Dallas Mavericks finally did it. They fired the much maligned, heavily scrutinized GM Nico Harrison less than a year after the trade that sent shockwaves across the NBA. So how did we get here? We have to rewind back to 2021. The Mavs make some changes across their entire organization after back-to-back first-round exits. They parted ways with longtime head coach Rick Carlisle and Donnie Nelson, the GM. They bring in Jason Kidd, who helped bring the Mavs a title as a player back in 2011, and bring in a former executive from Nike known as Nico Harrison. At the time, Nico had no experience managing an NBA roster, but built good relationships during his time at Nike with several players. Although his biggest blemish was botching the pitch to Steph Curry, where he addressed him as Seth by accident and also pulled up the wrong presentation for Kevin Durant. This led to Steph's eventual partnership with Under Armour. In his first season as Mavs GM, the Mavs went on to win their first playoff series in over a decade and made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, losing to the eventual NBA champion Golden State Warriors. The following offseason, we saw Nico's first big mistake as he failed to lock up budding star Jalen Brunson. As Nico Harrison had an opportunity on multiple occasions to re-sign Brunson for a cheap 4-year, $55 million deal. Instead, decided to play the waiting game and eventually got priced out by the New York Knicks on a 4-year, $104 million deal where the Mavs decided not to match. Brunson would go on to become a superstar, leading the Knicks back to relevancy and the Eastern Conference Finals last season. In 2023, with the Mavs sputtering and Luka just losing his running mate, Nico had to make a change, and he got creative by making a clever pivot to bring in Kyrie Irving from the Brooklyn Nets. At the time, Kyrie Irving was a social pariah and needed a change of scenery. While their initial pairing took time to gel, Luka and Kyrie were cooking together. Nico would strike gold again, acquiring PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford at the deadline to build a strong defense and bolster their perimeter shooting. The Mavs would go on for a run of the ages, defeating an old foe in the LA Clippers, upsetting the West top-seeded OKC Thunder, and later the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals. They went up against a stacked Celtics team in the 2024 NBA Finals, but despite the disappointing end to their season, they knew that they were a team on the rise, and ownership rewarded Nico with a multi-year extension. But this is when the wheels fell off. Just 1 week before the Super Bowl, Nico Harrison executed the blockbuster trade of the century, sending Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round draft pick. The move left NBA fans stunned all over the entire world. Doncic has just bought a house for his family and wanted to be a Maverick for life, as he built a tight bond with Mavs legend Dirk Nowitzki. But in a blink of an eye, the Mavs sent their franchise player and beloved superstar to LA. Right after the news broke, Mavs fans began rioting outside American Airlines Arena, and thus beginning the now infamous Fire Nico chants. The trade was unfathomable, like someone punched Mavs fans in the stomach, as now they have to embrace a nightmare that wouldn't be ending anytime soon. The return for Luka was just baffling. AD and Max Christie are nice players, don't get me wrong, especially with Anthony Davis, but how do you let the Lakers get away with Lakers keeping Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves has become an ascending player and became a full-time starter for the Lakers in 2023. If I'm Nico Harrison and I'm making a call to Rob Pelinka, the first thing I'm doing after requesting for Anthony Davis is I'm asking for Austin Reeves. And if Rob Pelinka says no deal, no dice, well, thank you, have a nice day, click, and then you regroup. But instead, they settle for Max Christie alongside Anthony Davis, and this is already looking like a really bad trade. And then when you talk about the draft capital that the Lakers sent in return, it was just a 2029 first-round draft pick. Didn't Nico realize that Luka is just now beginning his prime as he turned 26 earlier this year? He's already been to 5 All-Star games and been a 5-time All-NBA player, and single-handedly dragged the Mavs to the 2024 Western Conference Finals and later the NBA Finals in 2024. For reference, the McCall Bridges trade from Brooklyn to New York yielded 5 first-round draft picks and a pick swap. If you look at the trade as a whole, this is simply nowhere near the proper trade compensation for a player of Luka's caliber. The literal centerpiece of the trade in terms of from the Mavs perspective was Anthony Davis, a player who has earned a reputation of becoming an injury-prone player, as Charles Barkley famously nicknamed him street clothes. In his Mavs debut, we got the full Anthony Davis experience. We got an amazing first half littered with defensive tenacity with a few blocks, a putback dunk, and even splashed a three-pointer against the Houston Rockets. But in the second half, he re-aggravated his abdominal injury that he sustained earlier during his tenure with the Lakers and was out indefinitely. Since arriving in Dallas, AD has played in just 14 of 48 games, which is ironic because the premises of trading Luka Doncic, that Doncic wasn't a durable player. Meanwhile, Nico trades for Anthony Davis, a player who has missed 246 out of 1,012 possible games, which is the equivalent of nearly 3 full seasons or 25% of his career that he's missed due to injury. Did the Mavs really expect Davis to suddenly stay healthy at the age of 32 and also suddenly play 70 games? This is something that Davis has only done 3 times in his career. The other selling point for trading Luka was that he's been notoriously identified as a poor defender. With each year, there were noticeable differences in Luka's appearance, as there were rumors that he gained weight, as he was routinely beaten off the dribble, especially in the 2024 NBA Finals. Davis has been an elite defender, but never quite became a DPOY player that many pegged him to be early on in his career. And while this was a tough sell for Mavs governor Patrick Dumont, he eventually caved and the trade was done as the Mavs changed their identity to becoming more of a defensive-minded team. 2 days later, the Mavs go in further by sending Quentin Grimes to the Philadelphia 76ers to get Caleb Martin and a couple second-round draft picks in return. This I dubbed as another miscalculation by Nico Harrison, as Grimes went on to average 22 points for the 76ers, and later, once the Sixers got their stars back into the lineup, he's still being a productive player at averaging 18 points a game and shooting over 40% from deep. Things would go from bad to worse, as Kyrie Irving would go down with a torn ACL and won't return at least until January of 2026. Despite all of these miscalculations, the Mavs were bailed out on the night of the NBA draft lottery. Despite just a 1.8% chance of winning the top overall pick, the Dallas Mavericks won the draft lottery and the right to acquire Duke phenom Cooper Flagg. Fast forward to the start of the 2025-2026 NBA season, and it's been an ugly start to say the least for the Dallas Mavericks. Despite lucking into the top overall pick to select Cooper Flagg, they've been bitten hard by the injury bug leading to their 3-9 start. AD came into camp 15 pounds overweight and has since injured his calf on top of already dealing with bilateral Achilles tendinopathy. Factoring in the injuries to Kyrie and AD, you might have thought that this would have given more reps to Cooper Flagg. But despite being a gifted generational talent, the Mavs had done everything in their power to ruin his chances to develop. Due to the Mavs' short-handed backcourt, Jason Kidd was forced to get creative and started Cooper Flagg at the point guard in 8 games already this season. And this has forced Cooper to play out of position compared to his more natural position at the 3 or the 4. And during this time where Cooper Flag has been operating as a Mavs point guard, this has stunted his growth. And while let's remember, Flag is the youngest player in the NBA at just 18 years, and to throw him into the most demanding position in basketball is just coaching malpractice. While he's done a good job being a ball handler and he can create at times, there's just a massive difference between a situational playmaker and running an entire NBA offense. As Tim McMahon said, I think he's a good passer for a 6'9", 18-year-old forward, but he's not a good passer for an NBA point guard, certainly not right now. Through 12 games, Flag has averaged 15 points per game, 7 rebounds, but only 3 assists per game, which aren't bad for a rookie at this point, but considering that the Mavs need a true point guard, this is simply not going to get it done. And to be honest, it just feels like there's an element of trying to rush Cooper Flag into becoming a superstar just so Nico could justify the absurd trade of sending Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers. With the acquisition of Anthony Davis while also winning the NBA draft, Nico expected the Mavs to be a championship contender while still having the remnants of a roster built for Luka Doncic instead of matching the skill set of Cooper Flag. Simply put, that's simply not how roster construction in the NBA works, and it's understandable that you can't prioritize one player over an entire team. But let's be honest, the ping pong balls had blessed the Mavericks, and instead being stuck behind aging stars, they have a chance to reset and build around Cooper Flag. By the time Flag actually develops into an all-NBA player, Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis will likely be on their last legs in the NBA, as the timeline will never seem to overlap. So far this season, the Mavs offense has no direction without a true point guard. They currently stand last in the league in offensive rating, last in the league in field goal percentage, 29th in three-point percentage, 28th in assists per game, 23rd in points in the paint, and 29th in offensive efficiency, while also averaging 106 points per game, which is dead last and over 10 points off the league average. If this doesn't say the Mavs have a historically bad defense, I don't know what else will. So why are the Mavs so bad? Well, there are so many things for the reasons I just listed with the Mavs, but trust me, there are plenty more, and I would have a list to fill up the entire screen. At the top of the list has to be their lack of three-point shooting. This is a team that simply doesn't have a reliable shooter outside of Max Christie. Ranking dead last in three-point percentage, their offense is the second worst behind the Indiana Pacers. This affects the spacing where Cooper Flag operates. If they could only get a true point guard consistently into the lineup, his slow start might be actually accelerated. Just look at the numbers when Cooper Flag has D'Lo or Brandon Williams on the floor compared to when they're off the floor. And due to this poor roster construction, Jason Kidd had to get creative. Running an NBA offense was never Cooper Flag's role. Look at the other rookies like VJ Edgecombe or Con Knipple. The amount of shots that they make that are assisted versus unassisted is night and day. Let's also remember that Cooper Flag is the youngest player in the NBA. He's just 18 years of age, and I truly believe that he will find his footing now that Nico Harrison is gone. Checking in on the other team on this trade, while Dallas is falling apart and circling the bottom of the Western Conference standings, the Los Angeles Lakers are right in the thick of the playoff mix at 8-4 as a top 4 team in a competitive Western Conference. Luka Doncic is averaging 35, 9, and 9 and is on an insane tear to start this season. We've already spoken about his improved defense and his all-round performance against the San Antonio Spurs last week. I find it funny that Nico traded Luka citing conditioning and injury concerns when Luka has already played more games than Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Derek Lively combined since that very trade. This move will haunt Mavs fans for years to come, and Luka Doncic is playing the best basketball of his career. He's been more efficient. He's been better on the defensive end. He's making his teammates better and also in the best shape since early on in his career. And these are all things that the Mavs front office, particularly Nico Harrison, said he couldn't do. The slow start so far to 2025 wasn't part of the plan for the Dallas Mavericks, as the original plan was to get Cooper Flag up to speed quickly while AD leads the way and Kyrie is able to come into the mix just after the All-Star break for the stretch run, and the Mavs would be this playoff dark horse entering April. Instead, Dallas has been decimated across the roster, and it's not just AD. Kyrie Irving is still recovering from the torn ACL. We probably won't see him until early 2026. Derek Lively is week to week, and Daniel Gafford has been in and out of the lineup. At one point, got so bad, the Mavs only dressed 8 players, which is the bare minimum of players you need for an NBA game. Nico Harrison got so desperate that he urged AD to push himself to get back into the lineup despite the calf injury and issues with both of his Achilles. But thankfully, medical staff were able to intervene as there was severe risk of Anthony Davis potentially tearing one of his Achilles tendons. Nico Harrison has dismantled a team that has made the NBA Finals just 18 months ago. And since that very trade, the Mavs have gone 16-28 as the top player that they got in return for Luka has proven to be damaged goods, as Davis has missed several games due to various injuries. Nico's roster moves were supposed to transform the team's identity, being a defensive-minded team, but they currently rank 29th in defensive efficiency. The one thing Harrison assured that this team would be elite at. He lost the fan base and was under constant fire as the Fire Nico chants got so loud that the Mavs had to boost Nico's security intel. Coming into the season, the Mavs had a sellout streak of over 24 years, but that finally came to an end in early November as this finally forced Patrick Dumont to see where changes needed to be made. As many season ticket holders discontinued their membership, as ownership finally realized the economic repercussions of this terrible move, as ticket sales also took a dip, and this being a complete PR nightmare, Dumont had no choice. What finally may have gotten Nico fired was a teenager. A kid named Nicholas Dickerson is the son of a Mavs season ticket holder, and one of the games early and in the season opener, as Patrick Dumont was taking a seat, Dickerson flipped him the bird. His dad was not happy about Dickerson's actions, so he demanded that his son apologized to the Mavs governor. The next time that Dumont attended a game, Dickerson went over and asked if they could chat. And he had an amicable conversation just talking basketball, and he did this while wearing a Lakers Luka Doncic jersey. In that conversation, Dumont allegedly took accountability and admitted that the Luka Doncic trade was indeed a huge mistake. The trade wasn't in the best interest of the franchise, and he's working to rectify it, while also trying to win back the fan base. And by the next morning, Nico Harrison was fired. I think what really caused Nico's downfall was his arrogance. He was being reactive instead of planning for the future for the better of the Dallas Mavericks. Towards the end of last season, the Mavs were trying to do damage control, but things got weird in a media session behind closed doors where there was no video, no audio recordings allowed. And in that session, he reiterated defense wins championships to even the most basic of questions. At the end of season presser, he was asked why he shouldn't be fired. He responded that he couldn't be judged because of all the injuries the Mavs have sustained at the end of the season, and that once these guys return healthy, that the Mavs would be competing for championships. Mind you, earlier in his tenure, Nico fired longtime athletic trainer Casey Smith, who at the time was attending to his dying mother. Ever since Smith's dismissal, the Mavs have faced a spike in injuries, hiring and firing 2 more athletic trainers since Smith's dismissal. Fast forward, they're in the middle of a 3-9 start at the bottom of the Western Conference with one of the worst offenses in recent NBA history, specifically the 29th ranked offense in terms of offensive efficiency. And like I said earlier, they rank dead last in points per game. The saving grace for the Dallas Mavericks is Cooper Flagg. Whoever takes over the Dallas Mavericks front office role, their primary goal has to be focused on building around Flagg and continue his development. Even if it means trading AD or Kyrie Irving for pennies on the dollar, it's in everyone's best interest to look to the future. For a team just 2 seasons ago was in the NBA Finals to now blowing it all up is a devastating reality for Mavs fans to deal with. At the end of the day, Nico's lasting legacy will be executing one of the worst trades in NBA history and gutting a roster that made the NBA Finals just 18 months ago. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's next for the Mavs? What moves would you like to see the Mavs make? Mavs fans, are you finally happy? Time will tell if the Mavs move on from one of the darkest periods in franchise history, but this is certainly a step in the right direction. For now, we'll just have to sit back and be a spectator. The Philadelphia Eagles are back from their bye week after pitching 2 consecutive impressive performances after a brief 2-game losing streak. Questions about their offense were put on pause after the unit exploded for 38 points, and we saw Saquon Barkley look like the 2024 version where he ran for 2,000 yards, having his best game of the season. But against the Packers on Monday night, this offense reverted back into its old ways for the first 6 weeks of the season. After a promising opening drive to start the game, where we saw a lot of creative play calling, Jalen Hurts fumbled the ball inside the 20-yard line, leading to the Eagles to come up empty. The game turned into a defensive slugfest as each team would go scoreless at halftime. The first points of this game came in the second half on a field goal late in the third quarter. A.J. Brown saw just 2 targets on the opening drive and never saw another pass until the Eagles' final play from offense. But more on that later. In the fourth quarter, seemingly out of nowhere, Jalen Hurts ignited 2 explosive plays thanks to 2 of his best playmakers. On 3rd and 7, Saquon Barkley escapes out of the backfield and caught a dump-off pass, impressively maneuvering past Carrington Valentine on a nasty spin move to pick up 41 yards on a catch and run. On the very next play, Jalen connects with Devontae Smith on a deep post pattern where Smitty comes down with another contested catch for a 36-yard touchdown to open up a 10-0 lead. Philly's defense has been middle of the pack all season long in terms of points per game and yards allowed, but they arguably had their best showing of the season on Monday night, stifling Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers offense. Vic Fangio's unit came up with a defensive masterpiece on every level. The defensive line manhandled Green Bay's offensive line, sacking Love 3 times, hitting him 8 times, and forcing a key strip sack when Green Bay was threatening to score late in the first half. Their linebackers played sideline to sideline with Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean, with each linebacker leading the team in tackles. And it was Nakobe Dean who came up on the blitz to strip Jordan Love late in the first half. While the secondary has locked down Green Bay's passing game, limiting them to just 176 yards passing and a long of just 25 yards, the newly acquired Jalen Phillips dazzled in his Eagles debut. The former Miami Dolphin had 6 tackles, 2 quarterback hits on Jordan Love, a tackle for loss, 8 pressures, a fumble recovery, and played a huge part in stopping the Packers on 4th and 1 with a chance to tie the game, as he and Reed Blankenship combined to force a fumble on Josh Jacobs to effectively end the game. This edge rushing unit has struggled all season long, coming into this game with just 2.5 sacks. But after coming back from the bye week, the Eagles' edge rushing group nearly matched that production on Monday night alone, getting sacks from Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith, who's fresh off of injured reserve. Well, let's go back to the end of the game, where the Packers are in hurry-up mode on 4th and 1. While attempting to try and catch the Eagles sleeping, it was in fact the Packers who were tipping off the Eagles, leading to the game's most pivotal play. Moro Ojomo deciphered the Packers' code words used throughout the game and realized what play they were about to run. He called inside zone, pointing to the Packers' right side of their offensive line. As the ball was snapped, Ojomo and Jalen Carter got through the line quickly, where Phillips was able to clean up and Reed Blankenship recovered a fumble, which effectively ended the game. On offense, the Eagles couldn't quite bleed enough clock and decided to go for the kill shot on 4th and 6 from the Packers' 36-yard line. They tried to hit AJ on a 9 route, but Jalen's pass was underthrown, giving the Packers one last gasp. Thankfully for the Eagles' sake, McManus's field goal never had a chance as it sailed wide left, and it gave the Eagles an ugly 10-7 win. They moved to 7-2 on the season in firm control of the NFC East lead and earned another huge tiebreaker against a quality NFC opponent, where they've already beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Los Angeles Rams. The Eagles currently stand at 6-1 in the conference with a matchup against the Detroit Lions, who just destroyed the decimated Washington Commanders, and it's very likely that the winner of this matchup gets so closer to the NFC's top seed and home field advantage. Once again, the Eagles' offense has been under scrutiny with questionable decision making late and the lack of consistency on offense. Starting off with the fourth down attempt. I don't mind if the execution was off. Additionally, the defense has been balling all game, but why not punt and force the Packers to go at a minimum an extra 15 to 16 yards instead of starting at the 36 where the Packers needed maybe one or two first downs to get into field goal range. Additionally, the running game has looked like it's reverted back to its stagnant state as Saquon struggled to get going after the first quarter. Although they did struggle in the running game, I have to give the Eagles offensive line massive credit as they came into this game already missing Cam Jurgens, and later Lane Johnson essentially missed half the game, but this unit was able to keep Micah Parsons and a talented Packers defensive line off of Jalen Hurts, as Jalen didn't take a single quarterback hit nor a sack in this entire game against a vaunted Packers defensive line, as his white jersey stayed squeaky clean. But addressing what happened with the play calling, it was a great opening drive. Like I said earlier, we got a lot of creativity, but once Jalen turned the ball over, it just felt like Patullo decided to call a more conservative game. And A.J. Brown was at the center of more controversy as he voiced his frustration on a Twitch stream regarding his utilization on Monday night, finishing the game with just 2 catches for 13 yards on just 3 targets. I felt that his concerns are valid because even though I don't always agree with how A.J. Brown addresses the media or tries to get his frustrations across, the overall meaning behind it is very valid, and I do think the Eagles should hear him out. I think at the end of the day, A.J. Brown just wants to help. He knows that he's a talented wide receiver, and on a good day, he's a top 5 wide receiver in this league. But for whatever reason, Kevin Patullo hasn't found a way to get A.J. Brown the ball on a consistent basis. It's like A.J. has to literally beg and lash out to the media to get the ball. And we've seen that at times, like against the Los Angeles Rams and against the Minnesota Vikings, but there are other times where A.J. is just simply a non-factor. And of course, this also may come on Jalen Hurts. He also has missed some reads where AJ has been wide open and elects to go a different direction. And I think it's really all about getting these guys on the same page because this offense is too talented to be a middle of the pack unit when you have AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, and Saquon Barkley. They have to be better. And there's going to be a time where if this offense continues to struggle, there's going to be a team that catches up to them. And I hope as an Eagles fan that doesn't happen in the playoffs should they get there. I expect in the next game against the Detroit Lions that the Eagles come out with a game plan centered around A.J. Brown, emphasizing getting him the ball with several targets and even scheming him open for good looks and getting touches. The next few weeks, the Eagles can silence the critics as rumors continue to swirl about AJ's future in Philadelphia. Now, flipping into the Green Bay Packers, their recent slide, dropping 2 games at home, has to have some major concerns for Packers fans. This is their 3rd loss on the season, and in each scenario, their defense played well enough to win, holding their opponents to 13 points or fewer. In the NFL, that's good enough to win, and unfortunately, the Packers offense hasn't been able to score enough points. And it starts with Jordan Love, who has frankly been mediocre to say the least. We've seen a lot of highs and lows with Jordan Love throughout his entire career. And this is when I question whether or not Jordan Love is the Packers' weakest link. In each of these losses, Jordan Love has produced a critical turnover at a crucial juncture in the game and has only thrown 2 touchdown passes. Whereas in the games that they either win or tie, Jordan Love has thrown for 12 touchdown passes. It is understandable that they lost Tucker Kraft in a season where he was playing like an all-pro, but with him out with a torn ACL and Jaden Reed already missing time plus the absence of Matthew Golden, this offense needs to find ways to get creative, especially in the passing game. And that comes to Matt LaFleur. He has to find a way to be better because it's clear that the Packers offense was very dependent on Tucker Kraft, and he's been integral not just in the passing game, but also the running game, because we saw that Josh Jacobs, for whatever reason, just looks a little off. His yards per carry averages have dipped compared to his career averages. And while he's great in the red zone, he'll get you a touchdown pretty much every game. We've seen that Josh Jacobs has looked a little bit anemic in the running game. And now with Tucker Kraft not being out there, as he's really good with blocking for Josh Jacobs, it's going to be a big concern. And to add further insult to injury, they lost Elgin Jenkins, their Pro Bowl center, as he's going to be out for the rest of the season with a broken leg. From a coaching perspective, I have to say to Matt LaFleur, you have to change it up with these no huddle play calls. The fact that the Eagles were able to key in on what code word means inside zone means you have to have some variation. Either have 2 or 3 words mean the same thing. That way your entire team is on the same page that these code words mean play action pass, inside zone, screen pass, whatever have you, and in order for it to not be so predictable. The other aspect was Brandon McManus had no business being out on the field because he's been injured at least for the last few games, and he returned to the lineup and has struggled since. And for whatever reason, you still have Haversick active on the roster, and he's proven to be a reliable kicker because when he was kicking for the Green Bay Packers as their starter, he hasn't missed a single kick and even set a franchise record with a 61-yarder against the Arizona Cardinals. I understand conditions at Lambeau were a little bit shaky, but you have to go with the kicker with a better leg and can give you at least a better shot than what McManus gave you. At the end of the day, the Packers now stand in 3rd place in the NFC North and have to do everything in their power to get back on track if they do want to make the playoffs. In a matchup of 2 teams going in opposite directions, it was the Miami Dolphins who came up with a stunning upset win over the Buffalo Bills. Miami showed a ton of fight despite the recent dismissal of former GM Chris Grier and also the recent trade of Jalen Phillips. I've been critical of Tua all season long, and even in this game, he made some head-scratching decisions. He threw 2 interceptions, bringing his season total to 13, which now leads the league. But like every play, especially turnovers, there's context to it. And both of these plays were thrown into double coverage, which I do agree isn't great decision making. But when you look deeper into it, both of these interceptions came when the Dolphins were facing 3rd and 10 plus, basically the equivalent of punting a down earlier. And right after regaining possession, the Bills didn't do anything with these turnovers, leading to no harm done for the Miami Dolphins. Other than that, I thought Tua played rather efficient. He had 2 touchdown passes, one to Malik Washington and another to Jalen Waddle. But the star for Miami was Devin Achane, as he racked up over 220 yards from scrimmage, including 2 long touchdown runs to ice the game for the Miami Dolphins. These are the types of games that come back to haunt the Buffalo Bills in recent years. Despite winning the AFC East in 5 consecutive years, this loss puts that streak in major jeopardy. After a sluggish start, followed by massive mistakes at critical junctures, have led the Bills to their 3rd loss in 5 games. While divisional rounds can have the potential to get pretty weird, I thought the Bills could rise above. The inconsistencies that plagued them before the bye week returned. Losing the turnover margin and getting gashed in the running game have been their 2 major Achilles heels. The Bills' offense finished with 3 turnovers, with each of them coming in plus territory, and 2 being in the red zone. When this was still very much a game. Josh Allen dropped off since his opening month where he was stellar, and his turnovers have picked up, and he's a guy that has dominated the Miami Dolphins in recent years. But in this game, he wasn't up to par. In a crucial drive, had a chance to cut the lead in half. Josh Allen threw an interception in the end zone for a touchback. Later, James Cook would fumble inside the red zone with a chance to cut into the deficit, and these are the 2 major turnovers that I thought flipped the game back in Miami's favor. It just seems that there's still, and the other issue is, the Bills' running defense has been awful, and I understand that they've been affected by injuries, especially in the middle, but this simply cannot be this bad if they want to go where they want to go, which is, I anticipate, deep into the playoffs. It just seems that every year there's this critical loss that affects the playoff seeding for the Buffalo Bills. Go back to 2020. They lose to Tennessee and Arizona, which costed them the top seed. In 2021, they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who went on to win just 3 games all season long. In 2022, they lost to the Vikings, where Josh Allen fumbled in his own end zone. In 2023, They lost to the Denver Broncos thanks to having 12 men on the field for the final kick. And last year, a loss to the Texans where Josh Allen completed just 9 of 30 passes. I'm not saying the Bills have to go a perfect 17-0 every season, but some of these losses are just so head-scratching where I question Sean McDermott on having his guys ready for the moment, and also Josh Allen's ability to keep his reckless tendencies in check. New England has been on a hot streak. They haven't lost in nearly 2 months, and they seem on the inside track to winning the AFC East, especially thanks to already picking up a win at Orchard Park earlier this season. And if the Bills have anything to say about it, they're going to have to pick it up because it's 6-3 and the Patriots have just 2 losses and have to play the Bills one more time at home. This certainly puts the Bills at risk of losing the AFC East for the first time in 5 seasons. The New York Giants have fired head coach Brian Daboll after giving up another blown lead to the Chicago Bears in a game where they were up 20-10 in the fourth quarter. Ownership maintained that GM Joe Schoen will retain his position and will be part of the search for their next head coach. But how did we get here? Let's go back to 2022. The Giants cleaned house after a 4-13 season, missing out on the playoffs once again and dismissing head coach Joe Judge and GM Dave Gettleman. Ownership poached 2 key members from the Buffalo Bills, assistant GM Joe Schoen and offensive coordinator Brian Daboll, the man who helped discover Josh Allen and the man who helped develop him. The Giants were hoping that this could translate to their quarterback Daniel Jones, as to this point in his career, he has been a disappointment. In year 1, the Giants would have a 9-7-1 record, earning a wildcard berth, as Daniel Jones had a solid year throwing a career-low 5 interceptions, and Saquon Barkley returned to his Pro Bowl caliber form after suffering injuries in 2019 and 2020. The Giants would go on to upset the Minnesota Vikings, ending an 11-year drought without a playoff win. Despite their Cinderella run ending in the divisional round, for once the Giants had a positive outlook on their future. That offseason, cracks would begin to form as the Giants decided to hit Saquon Barkley with the franchise tag and extend Daniel Jones on a 4-year, $160 million deal. This is something I have been routinely consistent on this platform that this was a massive miscalculation. The true contributor to that Giants success in 2022 was Saquon Barkley, and simply put, Daniel Jones was along for the ride. But in 2023, the Giants never seemed to get back on track as they were unsuccessful in trying to recapture that magic from 2022, and Daniel Jones would also tear his ACL. Despite the opportunity to trade up in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Giants decided to stick with Daniel Jones and allowed Saquon Barkley to walk in free agency and sign with the Philadelphia Eagles in what was recorded in a now viral clip on Hard Knocks.
True or not? Which I don't know if I'll make a couple of calls. I don't even know if that's gonna happen, but
I'm going to have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia, I'll tell you that.
As the Giants tried to get back on track in 2024, Daniel Jones was awful from his first game of the season. Many were calling for Daboll's job. Eventually, the Giants released Daniel Jones, and the Giants decided to bring back Daboll and Joe Schoen for one last shot. In the 2025 draft, the Giants selected Jackson Dart late in the first round. The Giants suddenly had their quarterback of the future, as he would sit behind veteran Russell Wilson until he was ready to start. After Russ started 0-3 on the year, the Giants moved to their rookie, and he would impress in his debut against the Los Angeles Chargers. While we know that there are some improvements had to be made on his decision-making and his aggression, the coaching staff never seemed to prioritize to protecting Jackson Dart. There were so many times that Jackson Dart would be too aggressive, especially on those scrambling plays, as he was evaluated for 4 concussions already this season and actually sustaining one last week against the Chicago Bears. It was clear Daboll was coaching with his best interest to save his job rather than protect the long-term health of Jackson Dart. There were several things that attributed to Daboll's eventual dismissal. He was brought in to fix Daniel Jones, which he kind of did in year 1, but that never seemed to carry over in years 2 and 3 and led to his eventual release. Next, He didn't win games after his first season, as he won just 11 games in the 2+ seasons after winning 9 in his first season with the New York Giants. He also blew several games with poor in-game decision-making, which caused several in-game collapses, like we saw against the Denver Broncos, in which he called a soft defense knowing that the Giants would lose on a field goal, or kicking a 19-yard field goal at the half-yard line against the Chicago Bears when you have a chance to go up 2 touchdowns. He also never seemed to take accountability, as he pointed fingers at defensive coaches and fired guys like Wink Martindale after 2023, later berating Daniel Jones for turning over the ball rather than trying to coach him up in that moment. The constant crash outs where he slammed tablets or screamed at assistant coaches like Mike Kafka over play calling didn't sit well with ownership and GM Joe Schoen, as Daboll created a toxic work environment. Kafka, ironically, was named interim head coach and now gets a 7-game audition to see if he can take up the head coaching gig long term. Mike Kafka has built a reputation in this league, as he was part of the Kansas City Chiefs coaching staff when Patrick Mahomes bursted onto the scene and later became the quarterback coach in Andy Reid's coaching staff. He has an opportunity to really show that he can aid the development of Jackson Dart in these remaining games of 2025. Most important aspect for the Giants going forward is the development of Jackson Dart and seeing where there's improvement. It really doesn't matter about wins at this point. It just matters if Jackson Dart can eliminate the mistakes and build for a year 2, where he's going to be getting guys like Cam Scadaboo and Malik Neighbors back into the lineup. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Was this the right move? Giants fans, comment on what you think you'd like to see on this team going forward. Thanks everyone for tuning in to this week's episode of Spectator Sports. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm and reach a broader audience. And remember, if you want to get more clips from Spectator Sports, we got that for you here on YouTube in our various playlists, as well as on TikTok, plus the audios on Spotify. I'll link everything in the description. Shout out to Joy for editing this podcast, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Take care, everybody.